Hi, I'm Wes Roberts, Solution Engineer, and I'd like to talk with you about asset discovery and visibility in the Claroty Continuous Threat Detection, or CTD solution. Deep classification of both OT and IoT assets are critical to other important functions of CTD, such as accurately identifying vulnerabilities and risk in the environment, as well as threat detection. When we first log into CTD, we're presented with a default dashboard that contains widgets or bits of information from multiple different aspects of the product. This is the default dashboard, completely customizable, and each of those major sections also has its own unique and customizable dashboard. Let's focus on the one for visibility. All the information on the screen right now is derived automatically, determining whether devices are OT, IT, or IoT devices. I can look at information of devices discovered from the last month, week, day, entire year, or a custom time frame. Moving a bit further down in the view, starting to get into some high-level graphical representations, the categories of devices in the environment, more details around the device types. CTD automatically creates logical zones of communication between devices in the environment, closely monitoring and tracking all this information, creating baselines, and from those baselines, creating security policies that can be monitored in both Claroty CTD as well as communicated over to a firewall, for example, for enforcement. And certainly the solution can, show graphical information around devices based on their subnet membership as well. There's a focus on DNS activity in CTD. Certainly normal for, say, our Windows-based host to resolve DNS names from time to time. But if a PLC, for example, were making DNS queries, that would certainly be anomalous activity worthy of investigation. A popular way for safely ingesting information into CTD is the passive monitoring, the sniffing, if you will, of Ethernet traffic on the OT and IoT networks. Here in the default summary view, we're presented with the approximate volume of data being captured by the solution over time, as well as a breakdown of the protocols. Many of these protocols unique to process control environments. And then finally, as part of the default dashboard view, particular focus on process control activities, read and write operations, and similar information to and from our critical PLCs. Moving over to the assets view, we are presented by default with the table or database, if you will, of all assets stored in this particular CTD system. The default columns are displayed. There are many additional columns that can be added to the view. I mentioned earlier the importance of deep classification of devices. By that, at Claroty, we mean at a minimum, the manufacturer, the model of the device, the operating system or firmware, as well as, if at all available electronically, the serial number for CMDB purposes. I can use this information to immediately download in CSV or Excel format for use in other products. I can create and schedule a tabular style of report, all the information from here, or I can use the many different options here for selectively filtering the information. I could create a custom graphical widget for use in dashboards as well as reporting. Certainly, this is the tabular view. Also important that we take a look at the communication between the devices, the network view, if you will. Here in this view, not only showing lines of communication between different devices in the environment, utilizing unique colors to represent the category of device and unique icons to represent the actual type of device. I can make some choices around the colorization. Here we're doing it by type of device. I may want to color the devices instead by their risk level. We'll talk more about risk momentarily. Also popular in process control to be able to view this same type of communication information However, reorganizing the devices as to where they would logically belong on the Purdue model of communication. Here, it can be very visually illuminating to see which devices at the lower level have quite a bit of communication to devices in the upper levels of the Purdue model, just as an example. Quickly touched on the strong capabilities up here to filter the information by a variety of different methods. I can also use the search box up here for basically a text match against many of the different variables that we have in the system around these different devices. Here I've just chosen part of the name of one of the devices in the system. And from here, as well as a variety of other areas in this GUI, when I choose a particular asset, I'm taken to the device details view. Multiple tabs of information around each and every device in the system. Certainly the overview tab contains important components of information from the others here. But again, a huge focus is the manufacturer, the model, the firmware, and if at all available, the serial number. And especially with a chassis-based PLC, such as this particular component, the details around all the components installed in every slot. Also important for detailed risk assessment and vulnerability matching, as each of these is its own unique product with its running its own unique version of operating system or firmware. Also information that can be derived by sniffing the traffic around the devices that are nested to or connected below this particular PLC, if you will. Now, as part of the device details, we have entire sections dedicated to threat prevention as well as threat detection. However, certainly for each device, we'll show the information pertinent to that particular device, including, of course, a unique risk score that we calculate for every asset. Multiple different parameters, as you can see here, that are incorporated into the risk score, including, of course, the vulnerability of the firmware or operating system. However, that is not the only component that is considered here. And it's important to us here at Claroty not only to, derive numbers such as this, but to give you some detailed context as to how we arrived at that particular summation. Just a quick peek here at the vulnerabilities as part of the discovery conversation here. I want to point out the fact that because we were able to deeply classify this device and have a strong understanding right down to the specific versions of firmware, we're able to confirm that these are absolutely vulnerabilities that are applicable to this component as it is sitting and running in my network today. Also a focus on threat protection, threat detection just for the device. This is an example of a process integrity alert. This particular host does not normally perform configuration updates to this PLC. More details from the visibility and traffic monitoring around the communication to and from this device. Different host protocols, quantities of traffic, both to and from. Also information around the volumes of traffic outside of individual protocols to and from the devices to which it's communicated over the selected period of time. And of course, the protocols that we see communicating to and from this device. And a pre-filtered network map for just this device and its communication in the environment over time. I mentioned earlier multiple safe methods for ascertaining the deep asset details into CTD. Here at Claroty, we've spent many years developing what we refer to as safe active queries. Here we are using vendor native protocols to actively query devices and determine their details. This is very safe and very repeatable because we are mimicking the exact same protocol that these own devices management solutions use to obtain such rich details of information. Also have lots of information around great multitude of IoT devices from a lot of different manufacturers so that we can accurately and safely derive the needed details from them as well. We can do this from the management component of a CTD device in the network. We've also taken all of this safe active query technology and developed it into a standalone executable that can be executed from existing workstations in the environment. Also have the ability to read project files from a number of different manufacturers and process control. Do one-time uploads of those, or set up a recurring schedule to have CTD go out and safely read them. And with that, I thank you for your time.